Hello readers, I'm the Avid Reader and today I'm reviewing Colonization, Aftershocks, written by Harry Turtledove in 2001. So this is the third book in the Colonization trilogy and the seventh book in the World War series, so the penultimate novel in it. And it takes place during 1966. Lizards control half the Earth, the other half is controlled by human countries. So among the characters of the race, you've got at its head, of course, Atvar. And one big plot point in this book is finding out who blew up the colonization ships. And they do this through Straha. So Yeager is arrested eventually. So is friend Straha and the former shiplord. He takes a file with him. He goes to the race's consulate in Los Angeles. And then he travels to Cairo. And this evidence shows that the United States, and specifically Earl Warren, ordered the attack on the colonization fleet ships. And Atvar, of course, wants retribution. So it's basically, okay, A, we're gonna go to war. B, get rid of your space program as the Germans did. C, we're gonna blow up one of your cities. Earl Warren picks option C, which means that Indianapolis is blown up. And afterwards, Earl Warren commits suicide with a handgun. So afterwards, there's a commission instituted among the race, which includes Straha, Veles, Tomals, and the head of security, to determine why did Earl Warren kill himself and why did he choose to blow up Indianapolis? Because Atvar assumed that they would dismantle the space program or go to war, not allow one of their cities to be destroyed. And Straha makes them understand it makes perfect rational sense what Earl Warren did. Got caught, and he understood that for the long-term sovereignty of the United States, it was best to have one of its cities destroyed rather than to have its space program, which was developing very fast, being dismantled. And there's a chilly relationship between Atvar and Straha, and he doesn't really have a rank anymore. He's just called Superior Nuisance. And Straha decides to write his memoirs, so he doesn't really feel at home either in the United States or at Cairo. You've got Veles, who's a ginger-addicted female. Veles has been gone on a vacation, but she returns to Europe to work, and she eventually gets blackmailed and later on arrested for ginger smuggling. You've got Nesrev, who's a friend of Analowitz and who meets with him a couple times, eating dinner with him. Got Gorpe, who becomes a security or intelligence officer in Germany, which is partially occupied by the race. And then you've got Tomals. So Tomals has witnessed a relationship build between Quasquit and Jonathan Yeager, and when Jonathan Yeager leaves, Quasquit feels badly. Tomals half understands how she feels, but Quasquit starts acting more like a Tossavite. She starts growing her hair in different places. She requests that Tomals stop spying on her with cameras, and he refuses. She goes directly to the fleet lord of the colonization fleet, Refet, who agrees with her, so Tomals has to stop recording her. And Gorpe also is almost arrested for ginger, by the way. And those are the characters of the race. Now with humans, you've got Li Han, who's a communist rebel, and the communists are trying to retake China. They eventually capture Peking. They try to get the lizards to recognize their sovereignty. The lizards refuse, of course. And she has some revolutionary justice done in Peking, which in other words means she executes a bunch of people who collaborated with the lizards. So yeah, you can really see how bloodthirsty the communists are in China. I would imagine a similar thing happened once they won the Civil War in real life. But they are getting their arms from the Soviet Union. Vyacheslav Molotov does this through Zhukov, who's kind of the deputy leader in practice. When Vyacheslav Molotov wants to do something, he has to have the okay from Zhukov, but Zhukov's an old soldier, so he does whatever Molotov wants for the most part. When Atvar threatened to go to war with the United States over them destroying those ships, Molotov told the lizards that they were ready to go to war in solidarity with the USA, despite knowing that this could lead to their downfall. So the Soviet Union really understands how balance of power politics works. And they of course deny the accusations that they're giving arms to China. And the Chinese are doing a bit too well, so this might result in the lizards nuking China. So Molotov decides he's going to give less weapons now. In Palestine, you've got Reuven Russi, who's now a doctor. His girlfriend finishes college and she goes off to Canada. He refuses to come with her and he stays a doctor. He's called by his former lizard tutor and asked what they should do with two lizards who wish to get married now. So lizards never get married, but now one's ginger addicted and her friends wants to get married. And the Russes suggest, okay, just send them off to the United States. The United States allows pretty much everything. And Russia eventually starts to date the widow. In Canada, you've got David Goldfarb, who's making up a bunch of cool new inventions. He creates a kind of talking teddy bear. But you've got the English through Basil Roundbush trying to whack him. He's almost run over by a car once. But here's the thing, Rance Orbach leaves Tahiti eventually with Penny Summers, and they're on their way to France, but they stop by in Canada. And Orbach meets Roundbush, and he doesn't like how Roundbush talks talks and how he's thinking about hurting Goldfarb. So Orbach warns Goldfarb, and eventually when he arrives to France, which is now an independent country kind of, but dependent on the lizards, he arranges with the help of Nazis such as Dieter Kuhn to have Basil Roundbush whacked. So a satisfying scene is Basil Roundbush calling Goldfarb, okay, call your dogs off, I don't wanna die, and I will leave you alone. But Goldfarb doesn't really have a control over it. And eventually Basil Roundbush dies because his brakes didn't work, so he crashes, I think, in his car. So, good riddance, bastard. You've got Monique Dutour in France, who's in Marseille after that nuclear fallout. And she's arrested by the French authorities because she slept with the SS man, Dieter Kuhn. Her brother, I think, through the lizards, managed to get her out. And she's staying with her brother, Pierre. Pierre eventually gets arrested by the lizards. She goes out, tries to find a job. And then, remember, a lot of these characters are being changers, so they are together. So when Orbach arrives in France, he arranges for Monique Dutour to get a job because he's a good chap. And he blackmails Felles to get Monique a job as a historian at a university because she's had trouble finding it. So Monique is deeply appreciative of that. And eventually Rance Orbach is arrested with Penny Summers for ginger smuggling again. And Monique Dutour, she's a historian giving information on the Roman Empire to Thomas because Thomas wants to learn more about Tossavite history to be able to develop the empire more. Monique Dutour tried to use Thomas to get Rance Orbach out of jail, and he may get out of jail because of her influence with Thomas. In Germany, you've got Johannes Drucker and Mordecai Analowitz who are trying together to find their families. So Mordecai Analowitz, his family has been kidnapped by the Nazis, and Johannes Drucker, his family has just disappeared. Mordecai Analowitz meets his son Heinrich's Bethel thing, which leads him eventually to find his family at some farm where his family are kind of treated as slaves, but he brought along a bunch of lizards since he has influence with them and he gets them released. Johannes Drucker eventually gets captured because he's with lizards by some German soldiers who've gone rogue, and they're thinking of executing him, but his son Heinrich is there, so he's not executed, he's let go, and he joins up with his family again. So yeah, those two are back with their families together. And good thing for Johannes Drucker, and this is very interesting political intrigue, Walter Dornberger calls him up, brings him to the new capital of Germany, and makes him Major General. So he's a close associate of the new Führer, Walter Dornberger. And Analowitz understands that the nuclear bomb that the Jews have gone missing. So he goes searching for it in Germany. The Germans, lizards, and Jews are working together. And if it explodes, you're gonna have a second war between the lizards and the Germans. And they don't want that. Mordecai Analowitz goes to negotiate with these Jewish rogues. They put him in a cellar. They do the same thing with Gorpe, who was almost arrested for ginger. Eventually, the nuclear bomb does not work. So they release both of them and they get safe transfer. So they turn in the nuclear bomb to the lizards. So happy ending again. In the USA, you've got Sam Yeager, who was looking at some plants and animals that had come from home of the lizards in the southwestern United States, and he was taken into custody by some agents of Warren, and he meets up with Earl Warren. He's not killed thanks to the information Straha has, and eventually they decide to release him. Earl Warren commits suicide. Some people who put blood on the hands of Sam Yeager for the blow-up of Indianapolis. He meets with the new president, Harold Strassen. They talk. Strassen reveals that he's fired a bunch of these high-ranking officers who were part of this conspiracy. He claims he had no knowledge of it. Sam Yeager returns home. Eventually, he's out driving his car and he feels a gun and he sees that the former driver of Straha is going to kill him soon. So he's trying to take him into a quiet spot, but during a red light, Sam Yeager goes fast, collides with the car, so he has a car accident on purpose. The guy who's trying to kill him, he has no seatbelt, so he goes forward. Sam Yeager takes his gun, gets out of the car, pulls out the guy. The police arrive and they decide to arrest the guy who tried to kill Yeager instead of Yeager himself. And then you have his son, Jonathan Yeager, so he's come down from his relationship with Quasquit. Karen is not happy with him, but they get together eventually. He tells her everything about these conspiracy things that are happening. They become fiancés, then they get married. And finally, you've got Glenn Johnson, who's just a pilot and drives a scooter around in space. And now they're propelling asteroids into Mars to see if they can do that against the lizards eventually. And the book ends with Glenn Johnson tracking some lizard probes that are spying on him, and then he's talking to some of his crewmates and they're talking about how everything is going to go forward now with the human species. And that's the end of the book. So, how would I rate Colonization Aftershocks? I'm gonna give it an 8 out of 10, but it's a strong 8. So this is a good story, good character, good intriguing plots. It's not as strong as other books in the World War series, it's middling, but it's still a good book. You can see how some characters are really evil. You can see how some characters can come together, and you see some true sense of justice in this book several times. None of the characters you get perspectives from die oddly in this book, so that's something unique. This is of course the final volume in the Colonization trilogy, but there's Homeward Bound after that, so this is the penultimate novel in the World War series overall. But so far I'm very happy with this series. It's a good, bordering on great series. I'm gonna say definitely it's better than Southern Victory. Southern Victory is also very good, but I think this series generally is slightly better. So this is some of the best of Harry Turtledove works so far I've read. So an 8 out of 10. Good job, Harry Turtledove again. So this was the average reader's review of Colonization Aftershocks, written by Harry Turtledove in 2001. It got an 8 out of 10. There are some other books of alternative history I've reviewed on this channel, including several Harry Turtledove books. I hope you readers enjoyed this book review, and I will see you readers next time.